Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start. Looks like we're slowly creeping up. We have 81 right now, 82. All right, so I'll get started. So, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the second installment of the NISOA educational series surrounding assessor recertification and training. My name is Lance Van Heidsma. I am your moderator for today's webinar. I am joined today by one familiar face and one new face. The new face I will introduce first. The new face is John Nielsen. John Nielsen is the CONCACAF Supervisor of Assessors. John lives in Vancouver, Vancouver, British Columbia. Sorry, because there is a Vancouver, Washington as well, which we do have members up there. John is one of the founding fathers, I like to call it, of this assessment scoring rubric as well as system. So we are very, very pleased. We're very happy. We're very honored, John, that you're here to be able to provide some education to our assessors as we transition to this excellent system for our assessments. So
thank you, Lance. I'm very happy to be here. I wish I could see you all, but that'll be for another day. So I hope you enjoy this presentation, that you come back when you leave from this, that all you want to do is to go and assess tomorrow morning.
Absolutely. We do our best assessments from our recliners anyway, so it's perfect. Thank you, John. Our next panelist is a familiar face. It is Dr. Amanda Ross, NISOA's National Director of Assessments. Amanda is a current U.S. Soccer national referee coach. She is a retired FIFA assistant referee. She is a recent participant and graduate of the FIFA Futuro 3 course. And Amanda, thank you again for hosting this, being the hostess with the mostest, to be able to provide this education to our assessors, and we all greatly appreciate it. And I see Barry Tobin's on the call too. So Barry, welcome, and Amanda, thank you for setting this up for us.
All right, and thank you everyone for coming on, and thank you again so much, John. This is a great opportunity, because as I said last time, I've stolen this from CONCACAF to a large degree. I have assessed in many systems. I've assessed a little bit in the CONCACAF system, the NISOA system, the US soccer system, the pro system. And in my opinion, this is the best setup in terms of helping the referees, developing the referees. And that's why I wanted to bring this in and tweak it a little bit for our games and for our situation here in terms of making some of these changes. So let's get into it. So last we talked about this idea of critical match incidents, and I think my cat Billie Jean made an appearance that time too. She's climbing around right now. But anyway, so we made a comment we talked about these critical match incidents. So we're going to start off with a few clips from that John uses in his CONCACAF assessor training to walk through everybody and see how we're doing on that and what we're thinking. And have John to correct any mistakes I made when I was teaching about this the last time. So if we could go to Doug to clip 1 to start off with in terms of these critical match incidents. All right. So Doug, can we show the clip again? Just to make sure everybody has seen it, 100% certain everyone's seen it? Thank you. All right, so can we get up the poll, Doug? All right, thank you. So the key here is this a critical match incident that we should deduct points from the referee for? So if the referee was looking at an 8.4 before, should the referee score remain an 8.4 or should it be reduced to a 7.9? Yes or no? We need some Jeopardy music going now. Lance, you got some?
So it's those copyright issues we face with when we post it on our YouTube channel. So if you do, you gotta hum it.
Did think about it. Okay. All right. Is this a critical match incident that should reduce the score for the referee? All right, so we've got 74% that say yes, it is a critical match incident and there should be a score deduction, and 26% that say no. So John, why don't you tell me some of your thoughts on this clip? What are some of the keys to making this decision for you in terms of what are the factors we should be thinking about as assessors when we're deciding if this should be a deduction or not?
There's a number of issues that becomes really, really critical for the assessor. Of course, clear is one of my favorite words. Is it clear? Because we need it to be clear to be critical match incident. It has to be a clear incident, not something that we think maybe happened. So that's the one thing to bear in mind. The other thing to bear in mind as the assessor is when you're watching the game and when something happens in the game, the first thing you do is you look at the position of the referee. What did the referee see? Was his position acceptable for this play? In this case, from the throw-in coming in. Was that an acceptable position to be in? And in that position, could he see the incident? And if he could, was it clear? Because if he could not see the incident, it doesn't really matter if it was clear enough or not. If somebody is holding somebody else's shirt away from the referee, he will never see it.
Right, and that's a very good point, John, of something to build off of with regards to thinking about these critical match incidents, is if it's not possible, given the referee's position and being in a critical position, we should not be deducting points for them. So can we, Doug, can we start this clip from the throw-in, please? Thank you. So if we pause it right at the throw-in. Right, yeah. Is this a reasonable position for the referee to be taking? What do we think? Is he in a reasonable position for this throw-in? You can type it in the chat, various thoughts on this.
Or let us put it this way. If there was no handball, would anybody have said anything to the referee at this point?
Yes, very good way to think about this. If the infringement had not occurred, would you be talking to the referee about his positioning at this moment in time? And so far, it seems the majority coming in are saying that, yes, this is a reasonable position. I kind of changed the question a little bit and said, would you be talking to the referee about his positioning? So that some of the no's may be in response to that. But this is a reasonable position for this referee to be in. Given that this is a reasonable position, is it possible for this referee to see this handball?
And let's go further with that question. Where do we have to put the referee to actually clearly see this handball? we would put him in a position that is totally unacceptable for that kind of play. Look where he has to be here. He has to be behind here to see that line.
Right. So when, yes, it would be if he was, again, if we go back to what John said, and if no handling occurred and he was in a position where he could have seen it, you'd be talking to him about his positioning, right? Because it would be something super duper weird. So in this situation, hopefully, are picking up on this from the discussion. This is a handball. It should ideally, this is a critical match instance in the sense it's a handling offense. However, it's not reasonable to expect the referee to see this. He's in a reasonable position, and unless he has x-ray vision, he's not going to be able to see through the player in order to see this offense. So we're not going to deduct him points due to the fact that he or she is not a superhero, right? So this is the idea when we're thinking about this positioning interacted with this deduction idea. It's not just a critical match incident. It was wrong. Like John said, we want to look at where the referee is. This is a good position. It's just not possible for him to see it from that position. John, do you have anything to add to this?
No, I think that's really summing up pretty good. We have to think of if this doesn't happen. In hindsight, it's so easy for us as assessors to be critical. And that's a very dangerous path to go down, because all you do is say, if I was the referee, I would have been over here and I would have got this. But no, we have to look at what the game gives the referee at that moment. And if he's reasonable, then we have to support it. We can argue if he should have moved a little bit during the flight with the ball, but he's still in a reasonable area for that play. If there's no handball, nobody has a problem with it. So I think, yeah, it covers pretty good. But remember the word clear. Even the handball itself is not clear. Does it hit his head or the other person, the defender's head? Did it hit his hand or the attacker's head? It's not clear. And we have to have replays, not a good quality video, but we have to have replays to see it. And that removes the clear aspect as well.
All right. Very good. So, Lance, I did not want you to answer that last question that popped up. Can we look at clip number 2, please? Doug, can we go to clip 2? All right, so now let's look at the next one. So the key to this is now we are talking about the assistant referee. And oh, look, it's the same clip. That's why I was yelling at Lance. Because the question that was posed and was a very good question is, what about the assistant referee? Should the assistant referee receive a deduction for missing this critical match incident in this situation? So again, Doug, can we just show the clip one more time? And it's particularly the first replay that's helpful in terms of what view the assistant referee has. We'll get a poll up after this.
Pause it right there.
Right through here. That's good.
Go back. No.
Can we get a poll up?
There.
Bam. There we go. Is this a critical match incident that should reduce the assistant referee score for missing this? No. You can fill in your poll. Ali's on too, Lance. All right. So a lot of people are saying no. And this is good to think about in terms of, in terms of this poll. This is good that we're on the same page, because if we look at that view right there, the assistant referee is looking through a lot of things. And what else is true in this situation? Is there a close offside decision possibly for this assistant referee to make? If we look at this, we've got the defenders in red, we got green, we got a lot of players moving around. Is it fair to say that this assistant referee has some offside decisions to be making? I'm getting some yeses. I'm getting some no's. Yes, in terms of there being positions, okay. Yes. Okay, good. So that's the point behind this in terms of this assistant referee. There's a possible offside decision for him to be making. He's looking through a lot. So is this clear? Is this a clear handling that, given he's in a reasonable position and he is in the correct position, he is moving well, this is not something we should be deducting him for. This is, again, not a situation where we think the assistant referee should be able to see it. John, what would you like to add to this?
The two things I want to add is look at the concentration of the assistant referee. He's moving well, he's concentrating, he's looking across. So that's number one. That's important. You've got to give him some benefit now for being in the right position to make this call. Secondly, if we want the referee to be 110% sure to call a penalty, we want the assistant referee to be 150% sure to call a penalty. And therefore, he needs more clarity than the referee. And there's players in between him and the ball and the hand, and therefore we lose the clear. He may think there may have been a handball, but if it is not clear, we don't want a penalty kick from the assistant referee, and therefore it's not a deduction for him because he does not have it. If there was nobody in between the ball and the hand and the assistant referee, and no offside decision to be made, and we can ask him now to become more of a referee than an assistant referee, then we can maybe discuss if we should deduct points. But outside of that, we should not.
John, I got a question for you in the Q&A. Even though this would not be a deduction, is this still considered a CMI even though we're not deducting points?
In the CONCACAF scoring principles, CMI means critical match incident. And that means we only deduct to 7.9 or 7.8 for something that is a clearly missed, incorrectly called penalty kick, a clearly incorrect yellow card, second yellow card, a clearly incorrect red card, or missed person if you give the card to the wrong person, missed identity. So for that reason, that's the only CMI we have in our scoring principles. And we're going to get later on, I think we will get into the aspect of looking into, when it comes to scoring the referee, where we're going to put this referee in terms of his level for this game. And that will move his score. But it's not a single incident that moved the score. It is the total performance that moves the score.
Excellent. Thank you.
All right, great. So Doug, if we can move to clip 3 now. Thank you.
I think if the microphones were on, we would hear a big "ooh" from all the participants.
Yes, all right. So can we run the clip one more time through, just real quick? While we have the poll up?
So if you got the poll up, take your poll and click it and move it over so you can see your screen. So you can drag the poll screen away so you can see your webinar screen.
So again, just remember, when we're thinking about these critical match incidents, is it a critical match incident that should be a deduction? Should we be reducing the referee's score in this situation? All right. Go ahead and vote, yes or no.
Very exciting.
All right, so we've got a bit of a split here. So we've got 66% saying, yes, this is a critical match incident, and about 34% saying, no, it is not a critical match incident. So how about in the chat, just to get a little bit of participation, can we, somebody who says someone who says no, we'll start there. In terms of this being a critical match incident that should be a point deduction, how about some people type in what's missing for them? Why they don't. So do you see this as this is supportable and it doesn't have to be a PK, it doesn't have to be this, referee's positioning? What's your reasoning behind this? If you could type that in the chat for us so we can get an idea of where people's heads are at. Okay, so we've got somebody saying that it is, we have a fair challenge. We have somebody saying dog so. There is no dog so. Soccer play, fair challenge on the ball. Okay, some referees in great position. Did the ball go in? That's an important part to this, isn't it? Very important part to this clip. So does the ball go in the net? Not so much. So, okay, so the ball does not go in, as we can see. Sorry, I'm looking at this. So all the above and the players accept the decision. So John, how would you break this clip down? Where would you start with this in terms of how to think about this? So first of all, foul, no foul. What should we be thinking about and considering there? Can we support the referee not calling a foul here?
I have this word that's clear. Is that a clear foul? Is the goalkeeper fouling the attacker, or does the goalkeeper play the ball first? It's clear there. It's a clear foul. So now we have to say, why did the referee not call this? And stop the clip right there. Did the referee look for the proper angle to see this play, or is it possible that the referee was screened by the white defender in between her and the goalkeeper and the attacker? It's a possibility. And why did that happen? How did that happen? It was because she started late in anticipation for the long ball, and had she started earlier, she would have been 4 or 5 yards further forward to the edge of the penalty area, in which case she clears the visual path to the foul. That could be one reason she did not call it. Another reason could be that maybe she did not have the courage to call the foul. Because
so John, I want to go to can we go real quick to the point you just made? Doug, can you back this up so we can see what you're talking about with regards to the hesitation in the movement to the start of the clip, just to make sure that all the assessors can see that. So John, can you walk us through that a little bit?
If you go to the live play, just go back to the live play right here. Can you go back to the beginning, Doug? There. Okay, watch the referee right now. It took her 3 or 4 steps before she's starting to pick up speed. Look at the player that's kicking the ball. You can read from the position of the body of that player that is going to be a long ball. And we need that sprint to happen much faster, because 1 or 2 seconds gives you 5, 7, 8 meters, yards, which is what she needed to be away from the block to see in between the players.
Good. So if you could go back, just because I know a lot of us have not used video for assessments yet, and sometimes you have to piece some things together. So Doug, if you could go back to the beginning of the clip. Thank you. So right here, we see in this, pause please. There we go, perfect. We see in this that we have a player. There's, with a ton of space, she's looking up, she's going long. And then if we move the video, what we should be seeing now from the referees is we should see them running, because they should be anticipating that this is going to be possibly ending up in the penalty area. And when the referee comes into frame, we don't see her initially, she's just beginning her sprint. So as much as video assessment is not perfect, we can't see everything, we can piece together, she's not running at full speed. And if she had properly anticipated that long ball, she would have been going already, and she's not going yet. Fair to say, John? Yeah,
it's very fair. And here's the other point that becomes really important. The assessor needs to find out what caused this not to be called by the referee, because that's where you're going to give your solution. That's where you're going to zero in. You cannot, it's very, very ineffective to deduct big points from a referee and not be able to give a solution so that it won't happen again. Mm-hmm. This is what you need to really focus on as the assessors. How can I help this referee preventing this from happening? And if when you talk to the referee, it's because of, she says, I didn't see it, then you zero in on the positioning and the reading of the anticipation of the long ball. And that's what she needs to learn to pick up and do faster. If it's that she didn't, that she saw it, but she didn't feel because it was early in the game, she didn't want to call it. Now you need to talk about focus. What does the game need? Why are we there as a referee? If it's a clear foul, we have to call it. If it's a clear penalty kick, we have to call it. This is where you have to start thinking as an assessor, where do I help this referee? Because this is a CMI. And I think if you can just go a little bit forward to the last replay, because I want to just touch on the AI if I can, Amanda, on this one.
Yeah, absolutely. Please do.
Not this one, but the next one. Yeah. Keep on going, Doug. You can see how she jogs here, and now she starts sprinting. And if you can pause it right here, Doug. This is also a CMI for the assistant referee. Here's the difference from the second clip you saw to this one here. The assistant referee does not have an offside decision to make. It is clear she actually has the best angle of anybody on the field. So it also becomes a CMI for the assistant referee on this play.
So John, just really quickly with regards to this being a CMI for the assistant referee, if the assistant referee gives the information and the referee says, no, thank you, we're good.
Then you up the score. Then you actually increase the points to the assistant referee and say, good job, keep it up.
Yeah.
And you still deduct for the referee. And now you have more things to talk about in your assessment, in your solutions to the referee, not only the lack of positioning or the lack of courage, but also the teamwork aspect of it. So it becomes a longer report now.
Oh, hopefully that doesn't happen, because then it's a super long report. So going off of this, just real quick while we have this screen, John, in your opinion, where should the referee be in order to see this?
The referee, if she had sprinted correctly at the right time, she would have been, I would say, 6-7 yards further forward. And that alone would take her into an angle to see away from the white defender.
Right. Great. Thank you. Okay. So let's go then to the next clip. So this one, just to summarize, it was the first one versus the second. And the first one, neither the referee nor the assistant referee was it reasonable to expect them to see it. In this one, the assistant referee had a very clear view and no offside decision. Should have seen this. The referee, because of her positioning, she was not in a position to see this. And therefore, the first one versus the second one, that's why the first one is not point deductions, but the second one would be. Fair what I just said, John, to summarize that?
Yep, sounds good.
Perfect. All right, so clip 3 then.
Clip 4.
4. All right. So can we show the clip again while we have the poll up that people can then slide to the side? Is this a critical match incident that should be a point deduction? So is this a critical match incident that the referee should be deducted points for? So the maximum score the referee should get for this decision is a 7.9. Yes or no? All right, we're not showing a replay again. Y'all got to vote. Can't pull off y'all really.
Yes, let's get some more voters. We have 110 attendees, and we only get about 85 people. If you're calling in, we understand that you cannot vote, but if you are attending, please participate. It's anonymous, so we don't track who answers what, but it just helps with the overall scoring and the participation. Thank you.
And I know some of you are putting it in the chat, but please also put it in the poll as well so we can get some numbers. All right. So we have 60% that say no, this is not a critical match incident for the referee. So we'll stick with the no's. Those of you that said no, can you please write in the chat why you say no, this is not a critical match incident for the referee that should be a point deduction? All right, so Mike says not in penalty area, not a card. She made the call. She called the foul. Can I get a little bit of information on why she made the call? It's not a critical match incident. Are you saying that it was correctly handling? Handling was the foul. Okay, so we're saying it was handling and we support the handling decision, so she made the call. Simple foul, called foul. Made herself bigger, good foul, good decision. Arm was extended, makes herself bigger. She could see it clearly. All right, John, so let's break down the first part of this in terms of, is it a handball? So Doug, that freeze frame, you had it on right before with regards to the handling. Can we get it back to there? It was beautiful. Thing of beauty.
What year of the law would you like me to use, Amanda?
So it's the rules of the
the current one.
Lance.
The ball comes from a very short distance. She's clearly not making herself bigger. She's in a natural movement. She's actually trying to move the hand away from the ball hitting her hand. So I think most of the assessors who said this is not a CMI is looking at the handball itself and saying, it's not a handball. She made a mistake. She called the handball. No problem. The discussion becomes, what do we do when the team scores a goal directly from incorrectly called foul? This is where we need to lead this discussion.
Right. So in this situation, if we just take this as this should not have been a handball. So for those of you that were saying we're not going to deduct because we're supporting this, assume it is not a handball. Assume that we do not want this to be a handball. The free kick is given incorrectly on what should not have been a handling. Should this be a point deduction when this happens on the free kick from the handling?
Can we do the poll again now? Is that possible?
Maybe, maybe not. All right, there we go. Yeah, good
Yes,
job,
I
Doug.
did.
Thank you.
There you go.
Doug, what a man.
I changed the rules on him a lot. He's used to me. So again, assume not that we don't want this to be a handball and this foul was incorrectly given. Should this be a point deduction? 7.9.
Oh, that's changed. Wow.
All right, so now we've changed a lot. So it sounds like a lot of the no's were supporting the referee's handling decision. So in terms of the no. So should this be a point deduction, assuming this is not the case? So John, go ahead. Let's break down this idea, this thought process.
But then I got my work cut out for me now, don't I?
Well, here, how about this?
Let's try this. Let's try it this way. Are we going to, quote, punish the referee because the kicker had a beautiful kick and scored a goal, and we are not going to punish, quote, punish the referee if the ball goes 2 yards above the crossbar? And I wish I could hear you all talk, and I wish I could listen to the dialogue right now, because this is really what we have to consider. Why would we give a different score to the referee because the player takes a beautiful shot and scores, or the goalkeeper fumbles the ball and the ball goes in, and we're not going to do it if they miss and the ball hits the wall? It is the same play. It is the same mistake by the referee. The focus here should be on her incorrect application of the interpretation of the handball, and that the free kick is the next phase. It's a separate play. They're not related. They are, if you want to look at it in the game itself, but from an assessor and from a referee standpoint, they're not.
All right, good. So to go off of what John said, one of the keys when we're thinking about this, we had the list of things that were critical match incidents. In the last webinar we did, there is always the what happens after factor behind this. It's the initial decision, like John said. This player could have just as easily skied it over the crossbar, right? Actually more likely could have skied it over the crossbar. We're not going to punish the referee for the exact same decision because this player happened to score than another situation where they didn't. Versus something, if this had happened a little bit closer and it was in the penalty area, then that decision itself is PK, no PK. And that is a much more big picture critical incident when we're thinking about this. So
an attacking player hits the ball with her hand, the ball goes in the goal, the referee allows the goal. That is now a different issue. Was that clear? Was the referee in an acceptable position to see it? If yes, that is a CMI. That's the difference.
All right. Great. So I think that's a great way to sum up this clip. Doug, can we go to the last clip? Thank you. All right, we got the poll up. Oh, sorry, just so somebody wanted to please clarify the correct answer from the last clip. So for the last clip, that was not a critical match incident. We could, even if we wanted to talk about what we would talk more about, was it handling or not handling? But just because they happened to score off the shot, it doesn't make the free kick decision itself a critical match incident. So it is not a point deduction because it is not a critical match incident, even if the foul was incorrectly, even if the free kick was incorrectly given, in your opinion. Clear as mud, right? All right, so again, is this a critical match incident? And should there be a point deduction? So we're getting fewer voters this time. After Lance's comments, we're now down to 70. So we have about 72% saying yes, this is a critical match incident, and 28% saying no, it is not. So let's go with the group that's saying yes this time, since I've been going with no. How about some people type in the chat why they think this is a critical match incident that should be a point deduction?
Here's what we can also do, Amanda. We have activated the hand raise feature. So if there's anybody that would like to raise their hand, we can bring you in and you can answer Dr. Ross's question. So would you like to restate your question?
I would. So for those people that said yes, this is a critical match incident that should be a point deduction. Why do you feel that way? Tell me why you would do that. Why you believe that is correct. And Wayne shot his hand up right away.
Wayne, go ahead and unmute yourself. I'll unmute for you. Go ahead, Wayne.
My thought here is that we have a dog so. He was clearly in on the keeper, had distance, had the ball at his feet, was going in the right direction, and the defender reached up, grabbed his shoulder, and also looked like a little trip as well.
Okay, somebody else that had, yes, this is a critical match incident that should be a point deduction.
Thanks, Wayne.
Thank you, Wayne.
Absolutely.
Raise your hand and we'll get another person talking about why this is a point deduction.
Rob, go ahead and I'm going to unmute you.
Okay.
Oops, sorry, Rob. Okay, Rob, go ahead.
Thank you. Rob Komorowski here from the Philadelphia area. Wayne, would be a pleasure serving with you because I had the exact same viewpoint on this. It's a dog so situation. And further, I'm thinking that the referee probably should have gotten wide once that first ball was played by the keeper out to his back. The referee didn't seem to change any angle to see the next incident, potential incident.
All right, what about some of the no's? Some of the no's may have been convinced, but for those of you that said no, this is not a critical match incident that should result in a point deduction. Why do you say no? Raise your hand and we'll unmute you again. Brian Rosland. Thank you, Brian. You're on mute still, Brian.
Figure out how to get this thing off mute.
There you go.
Okay. To me, it's not a clearly incorrect decision. So yeah, you potentially have a dog so there, but I can't. if from the referee's angle, from what the referee, he's a distance away, but he's got a view of that. And is the referee's decision that the arm and the foot is not enough to make the foul? I'm not sure I can say that that is clearly a wrong decision.
Okay. Thank you, Brian. John, what's your response to Brian?
I like the way Brian uses the word clearly. That's what it's all about. We have to understand that the referee needs to know that if you call a foul on this play, it has to be a red card. What does that mean? That means that the foul has to be clear. It has to be a good, strong foul. If you go back and look at the play, the red player touches the blue player. He's not holding him back, grabbing him and holding him back. He's not pushing him. He's touching him. And that touch makes the blue player say, thank you very much, I'm going to go down. And therefore, the other aspect of this is that we tell our referees all the time that if you're not 100% sure, if it is not clear to give a red card, then you don't. You dumb it down unless it's clear. And from the referee who reacted fairly soon because he's expecting the ball to come up high from the goalkeeper. And then he has to come back and react. But for him to say, this is not clear enough for me to give a penalty kick, to give a red card, that's what we support. That's what we want him to do. Because if you give the blue player $1 million, I believe he stays on his feet. Maybe 500,000 even. And that's Canadian dollars.
All right, so does that make sense to everybody? So in this situation, it is not a deduction, it is not a critical match incident deduction because this is not clear. There is an argument to support the referee because like John said, at this level of play, there's contact, but is that enough at this level? Is he milking it? Is he exaggerating it? Is he making this seem worse than it is? Yes, he does touch him, but this player goes down very easy. And if that's what the referee says to you in the debrief, the referee's in a good position to see this. He has a good angle. And so in this situation, we support because it is not clear. What?
That's one thing is, if I may, Amanda, I want to say, I don't know how many of you assessors will have opportunities to watch the videos, but you have to be a little bit careful because the best way to watch the video is in real time. Mm-hmm. Sometimes when you go back and look at high quality replays, somebody gets hurt or hit hard in a challenge, and in a replay it looks like they're diving. Or somebody gets hardly touched, and on the replay it looks like there was a bad foul. So be very, very careful with your slow motion replays. Mm-hmm. If you have any doubt and really want to know, look at it in real time. And in real time, you'll see on this one that the blue player went down way too early. This is a high-level professional game. Contact is expected in this level. So we do not want the referee to give a red card on this play. And we support the referee. Now, the argument becomes, had he given a red card, can we now support it? And that becomes the difficult part of it because you can say, well, he did touch him. So it's hard to support, but there's an argument for supporting. But the decision that we ask the referees to make is, if it's not clear, go down. And therefore, that makes it harder to support a red card if he had given it. Because he's told to dumb it down every time something happens that's not clear. And that's the same with yellow cards, penalty kicks, anything that where he has big decisions to make. The same we ask for the assistant referees with their flag. If it's not clear, keep it down.
All right. Thank you, John. So that was just the very long review of the critical match incidents, but I think it was good. I think it was beneficial. I would have stopped it and cut it off if I didn't think it was a good conversation, a good discussion through the chat, and hopefully people have learned a lot more, frankly. from the discussion with John about how to think about these things and how we should be approaching this when we're assessing and when we're coaching the referees in the college game from that. So as I said in the last meeting that we had, there are two parts to the score. So if we go to the next slide, we want to think about this. There's two parts. There's the big picture and then plus the details. And that's going to equal the final score. So the big picture, next. One more next. Yeah, there we go. So the big picture is going to have some different components to it. So it's going to have 5 different categories behind it. When John and I were discussing this, I warned him I was going to do this so we will know what I was talking about. We were thinking about this big picture. So John, I'm just going to give you the floor to talk about that.
Okay, I can talk a bit about the big picture. This is really, really important. The big picture has 5 factors that we need to consider. And when we talk about the big picture, I like to actually call that the field score. What was your feeling at the end of the game after watching the final whistle? Did you feel so happy for the referee? Did you feel there was some smaller aspects of the game that needs to be adjusted? Did you feel there was some major problems, but it was okay? Or did you feel it was a disaster for the referee and I have to spend 2 days coming up with solutions for this poor referee to keep them positive and learning? But the 5 factors that we use in this field score is the game control and misconduct recognition, because these are the aspects that keep the game under control in terms of the player safety and the fairness of the game, the spirit of the game. This is what we need. And we use the personality and communication from the referee to achieve this. In the higher level games, and I would think probably college games as well, because there's a lot of hormonal stuff going on in that age group, is that we need to be dynamic. We need to have personality, because by personality, we can use our personality to control the match, and that becomes really, really important. Some referees have to actually be an actor because they don't have the personality that's needed for every kind of play, and they have to learn to be different than they would have been if they were sitting in a restaurant talking to their friends. The points of emphasis are all the big stuff that happens in the match, all the key elements that needs to be done correctly by the referee, and it all comes down to really positioning, and that's where your fitness come in. But most of the times when you find that there's errors made in the game, it's because the referee was not in the correct position. They often go for distance before they go for angles, and they don't have the understanding of how to read the game correctly, or when the game breaks, they don't adjust quickly enough. So this is a really, really important aspect of the assessor's job, to find out which one of those 4 elements have more weight in this particular game. The last one of the 5 is teamwork. And I always say to the referees when I talk to them before the match, is that when you have incidents that happens in the match, and they can be smaller incidents, and we need everybody to be aware and be involved. But when it comes to the critical match incidents, all the big stuff that happens in the game, we need teamwork to kick in immediately. Because we only one referee, we only have 2 eyes and 1 brain, and the game is too fast, the field is too big, the players are too smart. We need everybody involved. And in that case, the teamwork becomes so critical that we take the time to get these big incidents right, because that's what's going to affect the score in the end. If we don't do that well, then we don't get the right score. So these are the big 5 factors that at the end of the game, you have a feeling. And that feeling is the big picture. Then we go to the details. If you can see the next screen, you want to take over, Amanda?
Yes, I can take back over for you. Wait.
I can just touch on the difficulty of the game. It's not as critical. Mm-hmm. Most of the games that we see are normal. It is rare that we have a difficult game. It can happen, and it can be very difficult. All we have to remember is that if the game is made difficult by the referee's actions, then it's still a normal game. But we also have to remember that you can get a high score in any level game, because the score is based on your performance in that game. And if your performance was good, very good, or excellent, then you can get a very high score, even in a normal game.
So going on what John just said there, I know at least to me when I was still refereeing, one of the most frustrating things that would always kill me is when the assessor at the end of the game said, "Oh, you were fine. It was an easy game." And all you could think is, I worked my butt off for 90 minutes this game to keep it easy. And so just keep that in mind as well when John's talking about this with regards to the difficulty of the game. And I'm sure many of you, when you refereed, were told very similar points by assessors and equally just wanted to like scream on the inside of just because sometimes the game is easy because the referee made it easy. And at that point in time, we should be giving them credit for that. So when we're thinking about this base score of like an 8.3, we should be going up because that referee made that game easy. That referee had an outstanding game on a normal game and made it look like a cakewalk. So just keep that in mind as well when we're thinking about this in terms of this big picture, in terms of this feel for the game. If somebody is above average, and yes, I know my cat is wandering around behind my head, but that's just one of those factors that we can also combine as well. So continuing on, Doug, to the next part, the next slide. And then like John said, all of those things were the big picture, and then we have these details, and these details are where we're going to see the CMIs. And that's where we're possibly going to see incorrect yellow cards given misconduct, either given or missed, and incorrect offside decisions if we're talking about the ARs. So the big picture, like John said, and I really think that's a great way to think about it, and that's why I wanted him to start this off with that discussion, is that gut feeling at the end of the game of like, oh, this referee did good, or oh, there were some issues. Let's not get too into the details, into the nitty gritty, and cause us to drag down kind of this big picture opinion because, oh, there was a wrong direction on a throw-in or something like that.
Yeah, and just if I can say, Amanda, on the details plus minus, remember a few things. First of all, it doesn't have to be just a negative correction. It can be a positive. It can be some calls that are really difficult that the crew got right, and they should get credit for that as well. The other thing is that the details are only single incidents. So the CMI is 7.9 or 7.8 maximum. The incorrect cautions or the incorrect offside decisions, depending on what type of offside decisions they are, and again, they must be clear, are 0.1 deductions. So those deductions come off the field score. So if you have a field score that's good, you can still be good with a 0.1 deduction.
All right. So then the next slide, please, Doug. So again, like John was saying, we have these key components of the score, the match official's personal performance, which has control of the game in it, which is going to have these three subcategories we'll talk about: positioning and movement, and then teamwork. We put positioning and movement together in this versus separating them out like some other groups do. Degree of difficulty, which I know some people have put in the chat some comments about degree of difficulty. In the interest of time, we're not going to talk about that this webinar because there's a lot of different parts to this, and just in the interest of time. But that is something we are going to schedule more of these. We'll talk more specifically about how to think about the degree of difficulty in a future webinar situation. So, and then again, these clear and critical refereeing mistakes or errors, the CMIs, the missed cautions, and then also the any type of offside decision missed. So in terms of control of the game, there are three parts of this we're going to think about in terms of these three pillars: game control, foul recognition, misconduct. So we're thinking about that a lot of times. You may hear foul selection. That's what we're thinking about in this. Personality communication. As we know, it's not just about blowing your whistle and pointing one direction or the other. It's also, like John said, about your personality, how you're interacting with the players, how you're talking to them, that subtle word, those types of recognition as well. And then for us, it's this idea of game management, where we're controlling almost the bigger picture of the game going on. So in a little bit more detail on this, and John, please interrupt me at any point in time you would like with regards to talking about these different situations. So this is situations where we give the referee credit because they're dealing with misconduct situations appropriately. They are appropriately recognizing what a caution is versus what is not a caution, those types of things.
We just say, Amanda, for the assessors, if you look at the screen at the moment, all the questions or all the points you see on the screen, they are actually questions on the assessment form itself. So these are things that you need to observe and decide where you're going to rank the referee in that particular game for each of these questions that you're going to see during this presentation here. This is done to help you become a better assessor, because you may not think of doing identifying the moment of truth in the game, for example. You may not think of this, but we are asking you to think about it because you have to fill that out when you do the assessment form itself.
Okay. So to go off of that and to get a little bit of participation again, since we brought up the moment of truth, what are some examples of situations that could be the moment of truth? Can some people type ideas in the chat of what would be a moment of truth situation in a game? What types of things would that be? A dog, so a PK, no PK? Dissent. So you have a player that starts arguing with you, and possibly in that situation you don't deal with it, and now the other players can get away with everything, and that's when I start to lose control. Hard foul in front of the bench area. John, what do you think of that as an idea of a moment of truth?
If nothing else happens in the game, that could be if that's the only thing. If nothing bigger happens than that, then for that game, that is the moment of truth, because it's a freeze zone and it's really, really critical for the referees to be aware. And as assessors, then we need to help them understand how important that is. Stuff that happens in front of the bench. Good point.
Yeah, so it could be this hard foul in front of the bench that you don't deal with appropriately, and then things go out of control. Delaying on free kicks, yellow when it should be red because of a lack of courage. What about substitutions? I mean, in college, we can have a lot of substitutions, but sometimes this idea, this moment of truth, kind of these key moments in a game come when we have a substitution change. A key player comes on, a key player goes off, changes the dynamics of the game. What else really changes the game? I haven't noticed it yet, but another common one is goal, right? So after a goal is scored, there may be this moment of truth, this pickup in intensity, this change in dynamics of everything. So this could be one as well. So good.
It's the first foul.
What?
Sometimes it's how you deal with the first foul. Could be the truth from that match.
Right. So sometimes that first foul, how you react. So it varies from game to game. And I'm just throwing this out here just because I want everybody to be thinking about a lot of things. Initially, it was kind of these big things, the PKs, the dog sows, the fightings, the offsides, all these other types of things that lead to goals. But like John said, it could just be the first foul of the game, which is at midfield, and the referee just puts their stamp on the game at that moment. They take the opportunity.
And you guys, I see in the text, you put a lot of big stuff in, red card and dog sows and things, but you have to remember now, you have to find the moment of truth in every game you assess from now on using this form. Mm-hmm. And the moment of truth varies tremendously from hard to find to easy and everything in between. You never know what it's going to be until the end of the game. Sometimes you have the moment of truth in the 28th minute, but something bigger happened in the 47th minute, and then something else happened in the end of the game. But it's something to always be aware of, because this is what the referee needs to do to control the match, to be aware.
All right, great. So there's a lot of stuff. Can we go back to that slide real quick? Just back. Perfect. So just one other thing that's always really important is this idea of football understanding. I just want to emphasize this. I'm not going to read you everything on the slide. But this idea of having a football understanding is also always key. Something we're always talking about is, what does football expect? What is your soccer IQ? So that's something you got to be thinking about as well. All right, now we can go on to the next slide. Then the next part of this is this idea of personality and communication. And like John said, we're going to have all of these are on the form. So you will be looking, so you're thinking about these when you're assessing, you're rating the referee on all these different things during the form. So this dynamic personality, how they're managing when issuing yellow and red cards. Because sometimes maybe we want to come out quick with a card. Maybe sometimes we need to slow the match down. We have a variety of different ways and different tools that we can have in terms of personality and communication. This idea of a quiet word versus a public admonishment. Are we open to communication with players and coaches? All these other types of things. John, did you have anything else to add to this you really wanted to highlight?
Not really. The only other thing I maybe want to bring up is when you look at the form, what we have done, we have tried to make it so that the more important, the higher priority are the top questions. And as we go down the list, they're not as important. They are all important, but there's some kind of priority. So if when you start putting your X's in, if they start getting skewed to the right or to the left, that's going to help you with your scoring because you can see the importance of the decisions that the referee made in that match.
All right, great. And next comment, please. All right, and then the last part of this is this idea of game management. One of the big parts of this is this idea in the college game, especially of concussions and the management of injuries. So we need to deal with concussions. These are college players. If you see somebody grabbing their head, you need to recognize this. It needs to be dealt with immediately. Appropriate management of the wall and free kicks, all of those types of things. Knowing when to stop the clock, when not to stop the clock. Management of time wasting and delaying the restart. All of those are going to be factored into this game management. So these are things that are a little bit more of the nitty gritty that affect the overall selling of this game in terms of how it looks in terms of the picture and protects the player's safety and everything like that. So then on the next slide, we get into a little bit of positioning and movement. As you can see, as we all know, positioning and movement is the foundation for decision making. And that's how we were talking about these CMIs, if you remember, where we're not just thinking about is the referee a part of whether or not we're giving deductions is whether or not we expect the referee should have been able to see it. So we talked a lot about, is it possible for the referee to have seen it? Should the referee have started moving earlier? All of these different factors, because that's what's affecting this referee's ability to make that critical decision. And one of the things I always drives me crazy at times with referees when I'm talking to them about assessments, yeah, you didn't miss anything this game, but that doesn't mean your positioning and movement was good. That doesn't mean it was acceptable because sometimes it's almost like you got lucky that nothing happened. You were not using good positioning. You were not moving well. You were not anticipating play and doing all these other things and nothing happened. So you were fine. But we shouldn't just ignore the positioning and movement problems because what about the next game? Maybe in the next game now, I follow that same positioning and movement. I don't make any corrections because the last assessor let me go because everything was fine. And now I missed the key match incident, the critical match incident. So John, thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think Amanda makes a really good point because now as the assessor, you have to realize that if I give this referee an 8.4, what am I going to give them when they get all their positioning correct? 8.7, right? So nothing can happen in the game, but there can be minor or major improvement areas needed that moves that field score from a good to a satisfactory level. And that gives them room to move. Doesn't mean they're not good referees, but that's the level they're at the moment. And when they start improving on these things because you're giving them solutions that make sense to them and that when they try them, they see that they work, then they're going to start getting higher scores.
Great. All right. Thank you. And then next, yep. So the following list is, again, these are a lot of these criteria when we're evaluating the referee's performance, this idea of positioning and movement. So the next slide, this is showing what's going to be in the form, what is in the form. with regards to positioning and movement. So one of the first things listed is this idea of stamina. So was the referee fit enough for the entire match? Did they keep moving? Explosive movement is also a really, really important criteria when we're talking about referee positioning and movement, especially. This idea of the quick burst, we were talking about it in clip 4, right, John? With regard to that referee needing that explosive movement a half second sooner in order to be in a good position. Also, this management of the drop zone on penalty areas. Something else that's really important is it was brought up in the chat, this idea of positioning and angles, especially in front of the bench. In CONCACAF, they call that the free zone. I don't know if Lance and Tori have been throwing that verbiage around during all their summer series. So, okay, we are. All right, so that I am allowed to use it here. I know different places use different language. So this idea of the free zone, so those areas in front of the benches, the technical areas, where a lot of stuff happens in that situation, right? The hard fouls, for some reason, on the exact same part of the field, but on the other touchline, nothing ever happens there. Any insights into why, Lance?
Well, I mean, there's a couple of things, right? So many of you on this call have heard us use the terminology free zone, whether it be in the stimulus quiz this spring or the summer educational series this summer. And remember, the free zone is when players feel that they have the freedom to commit fouls, not only more fouls, but also harder intensity fouls. And there's some statistics that back this up. And typically it's in front of the two technical areas, kind of that giant semicircle that it starts on one end and goes all the way to the other end. They typically feel that they can commit these harder fouls in that area because they have their teammates there on the bench. They also have their coaches there. So they feel like they're trying to prove something, that they're playing hard. We all know, especially in the college game, that players get very emotional, and they think that by playing harder, they are going to gain more playing time as opposed to necessarily playing smarter. So that happens a lot more often in the collegiate game. On the flip side of that, there are fouls that do happen as well across the other side of the field, even though you don't have the benches over there. Why? Because players feel that there's nobody over there watching them. Okay, so like with the referee, they typically don't feel the referee over there. And the assistant referee is typically already down the touchline, even with the second to last defender. So they feel like there's nobody there to punish them. So those are two areas of the field that we've really concentrated on with the referee education. And we're hoping by controlling the free zones will in fact help with game control. I hope that explains it.
Yeah, well said, Lance.
Yes, well said. Thank you, Lance. All right, so then I'm leaving it on Lance's comment on positioning and movement. So then the last part of this is this idea of teamwork. And a key to this is assisting versus insisting plays a very important role in this. This eye contact, the communication. This doesn't have as much as the other categories because like we said, a lot of the stuff isn't weighted equally. It is not weighted equally in terms of getting the final score. And teamwork is important. I am not minimizing this or anything along those regards, but it's just not quite at the same caliber as you miss 5 cautions or something like that. So we want to make sure that the team is empowered. We're working together. Everyone's helping appropriately with mass confrontation. Appropriate official makes the decisions, so on and so forth with regards to teamwork. Next slide, please. And so, John, we're going to use this as the last little bit to wrap up because I want to leave a little bit of time for questions. So I'm going to let John comment to wrap this up on this slide before we go to general questions.
Right. Thank you, Amanda. Yeah. So this is really, really important because this is where your score comes in. This is where you decide from the feeling that you get at the end of the game, what was the performance by that referee in this particular game? Now remember, it wasn't your game. It was the referee's game. So you can't judge it from what you would have done or how you refereed, because if you remember, you never made any mistakes when you refereed, right? So be very careful that you can actually have the ability to put yourself on the field, to be part of the game and not apart from the game. Just like we asked the referee to do, feel the game. There's certain games where one action is going to work and another game that action does not work. It's going to be a different action. And you need to be able to read that and understand that when you're watching it. So your field score becomes a true picture of that performance. And if you can do that, it makes the scoring very, very simple. Because we have unacceptable, I hardly ever see. I mean, my grandmother, I think she did a game that was unacceptable. But outside of that, we really don't see it. Below expectation is very rare. The times we get below expectation, that means it's a lack of control. It was absolutely very difficult to come up with just 3 things to help the referee giving solutions to their problems, because there was 200 of them. And it doesn't happen often, but when it happens, it could be 2 CMI, 2 critical mass incidents in one match, brings it to below expectation to a maximum of 7.4. Satisfactory, we break down into 2 levels. Minor changes has to be made, or major changes have to be made. So the 8.2 is the minor changes, satisfactory with minor changes, and the 8.0 to 8.1 is the major changes in that game that really affected the game, and the referee needs to really listen to what you have to tell them to help them get better, because these things need to be fixed. If they make these decisions in every game, they're not going to be a good, strong referee. Good is where we start. 8.3, 8.4, that's the level. So normally, when you walk up to the referee and say, that was a good game, and shake their hands, then you already know where your score is going to lie. Now, of course, you can still have a CMI or a 0.1 incident, single incident deduction for a missed yellow card. That doesn't mean it was not a good performance. That missed yellow card does not affect your field score, but it brings it down 0.1. And then we have very good, which happens not often enough, I think, from assessors. And excellent is where we want to go. We want everybody to be excellent. So these are the names that you have to remember, and you have to tie them, and the assessment form ties them directly to a scoring range. So you can now use your X's as you answer all the questions, and as they start falling in different places, you can actually see where the score should lie. But it should fit your field. If you're not fitting your field, then you're not putting the X's correctly, because your field is your true picture in your mind and in your heart of this game. And the reason we have 2 scores is that we want to make sure that we give credit to the referee who has a good game but made a critical mass incident error. And outside of that, he had a good game. He was an 8.4 decision or a game with a wrong decision. So his final score is 7.9. But we need the administrators, the people controlling the referees, to know that that was a good performance. It just had 1 error. That's why we put the second score in there. Because if we didn't put the 8.4 score in there, and we just gave, let's say we had somebody who had an 8.3 and then they had a missed yellow card and they became an 8.2, now that means it was a satisfactory performance. That's not true. The performance was good with 1 missed yellow card. So this is really important that you get this part of the assessment form scoring principles correct, so that if you get that in the range, then you're going to be fine. And then you're being fair to the referee. And that's the bottom line. Be fair to the referee.
All right. Thank you so much, John. So I'm going to leave the last 10 minutes on this for any remaining questions we may have that people want to type into the chat or the Q&A.
Until we get a question, can I say something else, Amanda?
Absolutely, John. Please go.
First of all, you have to concentrate when you assess. I see so many assessors and they're talking to their friends and enemies maybe as well, and they're busy with other things. You have to concentrate because you have to see everything. And for you to answer all these questions at the end of the day, you have to have seen it. If you don't observe and really pay attention to everything that happens and all 4 officials, then you're not going to be able to fill the form out correctly. So that's one thing. The other thing is that everything doesn't matter unless you have the ear of the officials. So if you have not found a way for you to reach them, that they respect you, that they understand that you're not there to bring them down, but you're there to support and help them. If you can get them to understand that you are part of the team, then it's likely that they will not only listen, but remember and try what you said. And if you manage to get them to change the way they referee, then you are a good assessor. That is how I judge you as an assessor. If you cannot go in there and make them better referees, then you're wasting your and their time. So it's really important that you pay attention to what kind of referee am I talking about? What personality does he have? How can I best relate to that personality, and how can I get that referee to respect and listen to what I say? So that's important.
John, question. We all, just like at CONCACAF, NISOA wants their referees to be excellent. So out of all the assessments that you've seen, and you've seen thousands of assessments.
Yes.
Okay. Do you know off the top of your head roughly how many of those assessments have been excellent? And with that said, what's that score range look like? Because we've said we're starting at that 8.3 range for a starting point for a good game. What is an excellent?
I think that if I look at the numbers from last year, I think there was maybe, of the official assessments that I saw, maybe 20 to 30 assessments that went into the excellent range of the officials out of about 530 assessments. So it's a low number, and it's not high enough. When I do training of assessors and I show them clips and I ask for changes to scores, I get referees knocked down, giving a negative score all the time when it's wrong. It is the rare case when they make it wrong by giving a positive score. It's always looking for mistakes. And I keep on saying, we are not looking for mistakes. We're looking for solutions. That is the key word outside of clear that I hope you can get from this, is you are here to give solutions. The more difficult the game was, the lower the score, the more you need to write in the assessment to give solutions. If you cannot give a solution, you should not even mention it. Even if you think it's a CMI. No solution is no mistake.
All right, great. It is actually a great way to end this. So I know there are other questions coming in, but I really think that was a very, very good sticking point. So I'm actually going to cut it off after this. This idea of looking for solutions and not just focusing on the negatives. Thank you everybody for coming on and participating. I know some people have been asking about seeing the form and doing other things. We're going to get this posted on the website in the very near future, within the next 2 weeks. And we're also going to look to schedule another one of these because I think most conferences have been pushing back their start date a little bit. So it seems like a good opportunity for us to train. So keep an eye out for more information with regards to another one of these to talk a little bit more now, adding on to this in terms of the scoring and everything from this. I want to thank John again so much for coming on. I think it was great. Hopefully everybody appreciate everything he had to say. Lance is not worthy. But everyone have a good night. Thank you for coming on. And
I'd like to thank you, Amanda, for all the work that you do. And I'd like to thank you for taking on this assessment form, because I think this assessment form not only makes the referees better, but it also makes the assessors better. So thanks for doing all the work you do. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night, and we'll see you all next time.
One question, Amanda. One question.
Go ahead.
I have created a survey
regarding
the webinar to help drive us with education going forward. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in the chat for everybody to please take time to fill out. It's about 3 minutes long. It would really help us formulate the educational plan and the needs of our assessors going forward. So we really do appreciate that. And please, it's anonymous, so please be honest. That's it. Thank you, everybody.
Everyone.
Thank you,
Thanks,
John.
guys.
You're the man.